Hi, everybody. This is Jason Mark Campbell, and welcome to my presentation when it comes to selling with love. Now, before I get started with what I want to present to everybody here, is just to give a big thanks to the Billios Summit organizers and everybody who's put this magical thing together. And if you're taking the time right now to learn all of these different strategies, all of these different ways to be better in your e-commerce and learning how to market and sell yourself out there, I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for making this a time that you're actually going to go out and make the best of who you are so you can really make the impact that you really want to make, which is going to be a clue as to what I want to teach today. See, when it comes to the concept of selling, you're in e-commerce. And so there's a lot of sales, there's a lot of marketing that needs to happen. Yet I've encountered so many people over the years that regardless of the product they have, regardless of the clientele that they serve, there's things that stop them from really going out there and making the sale, really going out there and using all the methods that are out there. And what I'm hoping to do for everybody who's tuning in today is really shift your mind around selling so that when you know you have to go out there and present what it is that you want to present to the world and sell it, you can do it boldly, you can do it proudly, and you can do it with an enthusiasm that we know is extremely effective whenever it is that you want to be able to make the sale. So in my case, I've had a chance to work at a company such as Mindvalley, which you've just heard from the current CMO, Marisha. I've actually had a chance to work with Marisha over some several years, and I found myself always to be one of the people that was leading when it comes to sales initiatives, being able to put together events, being able to sell products. And I'd always have this contagious, ridiculous, probably not that natural enthusiasm when it came to sales. And most people are like, why is that? And I always had this idea that I really want to be able to share with most people because what happens is when you start looking at sales and we look at how the media portrays sales at a large, there's a lot of caricatures that can come to mind. When we think about characters, I like if I think what is one of the most relevant sales movies that exists today, like one that's modern, one that everybody would be able to understand quickly. Like if I say, what's a movie about sales that not necessarily good or bad, let's just say it's about sales, but I would have examples such as The Wolf of Wall Street would come up. There might be, episodes of Mad Men. There might be, if you're a little older, maybe it's like Glengarry Glen Ross, and maybe just Wall Street if you're more of a fan of Gordon Greco than Jordan Belfort at this point. But there's this certain stereotype of this salesperson that we would look up to in pop culture. But if you dig down into the aspects of what they do, there's a few common themes that come up. Now, I've had a chance to speak to audiences around the world about this topic, and I always love asking a question, which is, when you think sales, when you think salespeople, like what's the first idea that comes to mind? Like, what's the emotion that comes up? Like, come and throw out some words here. So, if you're using the chat, this would be a good time. Just throw out some words that you feel represent what salespeople or salesman or saleswoman is. And I always get an inventory that's similar. I hear evil, manipulative, slimy, yuck, and all of these negative words that represent sales. So whenever it is you want to go out there and build a business, grow your business, I'll give you a punchline here. You are going to need to increase sales. Sales is where everything ends in beginning. If you don't have any sales, you're not going to be driving revenue. And if you're not driving any revenue, you don't have a business. Now, what resistance would happen if you need to step into your role of maximizing sales, yet you understand that there's all these negative associations with sales? And let's step away from the media here and let's go back into maybe our own experiences and we think about these sales experiences we have. Very rare are the few that have had consistent good sales experience. When I ask about, what is the most typical salesperson you can think of? Like if I say salesperson, like what's the person that comes to mind? And 9 times out of 10, I always hear the example of a used car salesman. And if that's also what came into your mind, it might not have been if you maybe would have said an insurance salesman, MLM, you would have said real estate, but there's usually something that we've had a strong emotion with. Okay. Now, I find it really funny because I have a very different story is that when I was in high school, now this was back in Canada, this is Ottawa, Canada. So big city for Canada, less than a million, small city on the world stage. Still, I was from a village even smaller than that. So I can't even pronounce it in English because it's a French name. It's Plantagenet, 1,000 people, right? Very small villages where I grew up. Now, we at the school had a charity drive to do. And this charity drive was just about going to sell these chocolate covered almonds. I don't know if your school ever had to do this, but they were basically these little, it was called the world's finest chocolate. And it was pretty good. Maybe not the world's finest. I think they were maybe overselling at this point. But they were encouraging you to go door to door and suggest to people if they wanted to buy your chocolates. So I got naturally excited about it. And what happened is I knocked at the first door and I'm like very shy at this point. I just asked like, "Hey, do you want to buy some chocolates?" And the first person is like, "Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, it's $2 chocolates. Why not?" They buy a bar, they get to support a charity in the process. They're left very happy. They're happy I knocked, and I'm like, "Wow, okay, that was fun." So I go to the next neighbor, same reaction. I go to the next neighbor. Again, they buy 2 chocolate bars. I'm like, "Oh, look at me. Like, this is great. I just need to knock at the door." And of course, I had terror. Like, I was afraid to knock on the door, fear of rejection, all of these. But, every impression that I had gave me a positive experience. So I'm like, that's not a bad thing. So I'm encouraged. By the 5th door, I end up knocking, and the lady's like, "Give me a moment. I'm going to ask my daughter to come down." And then this beautiful lady came down, and beautiful lady, 15 years old is what I was, she was. And this lady, I end up selling chocolates, getting her number, and ends up being one of my first girlfriends. And I say this story because it's so funny. Most people don't have a positive experience when they're very young, impressionable when it comes to sales. Yes, for me, I was like, wow, sales will bring you love. Isn't it by example that I wrote a book that is called Selling with Love? And this is the promise and the premise that I want to make sure that everybody's going to learn is how do you fall in love with sales? That whenever you come to a sales interaction, you get so excited that you're going to do what is required for people to understand the true value you want to give them through any transaction. And just to give a caveat here, in case you're sitting here saying, like, well, Jason, I have an automated business and all of my sales happen online. Perfect. You've basically designed automatic salespeople because a lot of the work that you do and a lot of the things that are being taught at this summit are in the realm of marketing, yet they're still direct response sales. We're bringing people to call to actions. We want to convert people to make that purchase. And there is a element of sale in every one of these transactions. So the marketing, if you're sticking to the branding, get building the traffic, that's great. When it comes to driving that conversion, you're going to want to put that sales hat on. And I would love for you to be able to do it enthusiastic and coming from the best of place. Asking you to fall in love with anything can be a little difficult. I mean, we have difficulty sometimes just maintaining relationships. Now I'm asking you to build a relationship with sales to love it can be a tall order, but let's make maybe a first case about liking sales, right? So let's start maybe not hating the sales. And I speak again around what this media and the culture kind of brings up forward on our impressions around sales, but let's look at different areas as to why we resist sales so much. And what I've realized through the research I've done is that there's a lot of shame and guilt blockages for sales. And this is like you would want like every time sales is your primary activity that you need to do, which I'll give you a clue if you're a small business owner, it's always going to be sales, your primary activity. Increasing sales and revenue solves all other problems. At least that's the first thing you need to jump as a hurdle. Then you can start maximizing profit. Then you can start building order and systems. But the number one thing is always going to be to drive revenue, and you need to embrace sales. So, what's the guilt and what's the shame that happens? Well, you're having resistance to if you're doing more traditional style sales, you're having resistance to pick up the phone and close that order. You're having resistance to follow up that email. You're having resistance building an email funnel that actually sends multiple email reminders because you don't want to be annoying to people. Or you're having hesitancy on posting on social media and you're trying to provide more and more value. And every time it's about, asking for a sale and making a post that drives for sales, you seem to schedule them later or push them aside or afraid that people will walk away or not want to do business with you because they think you'll be too pushy. Now, mind you, there's always needs to be a nuance. There always needs to be a great strategy on how you execute. And you've been learning these amazing ways that you can deliver value and convert at the same time. But realize that some of us definitely have blockages when it comes to sales. I've had times where I, this was maybe a little earlier within my career. There were times that I did not want to even make that sale happen. Now, this would be a second reason why I found myself having to sell these real estate coaching packages. And not the most proud sales that I've done in my early 20s. But while I was doing it, it felt like the greatest product at the time. But I remember being on a conversation with someone who would not have been able to go into the area that we were selling real estate because they had a criminal record. Somebody that came out of jail. And at this point, I'm trying to sell them a package on how to buy US real estate as Canadians. They can't even go into the US because they have a criminal record. And so in my head, I'm like, this person's probably very limited in the amount of success they can have in this program. Yet, whenever I got on the interaction, I wasn't able to sell as enthusiastically. I had this like resistance on my shoulder that I did not want to sell to this person. And this is another reason why maybe some of you might have some blockages when it comes to selling. It's how much value are you providing to the person you're selling to? Like, how is it that whenever you're going to sell to this person, that you're truly going to drive amazing transformation into their lives so that you're very enthusiastic about selling? And herein lies a clue. Because when I talk about shame and guilt blockages, whenever I speak of selling, some of it is good. Some of it is an indication that you need to change something. Maybe you're not serving the right customer and you're basically reacting to, hey, maybe I should understand their needs better. Or maybe the product you're selling is not necessarily the best that it could be. And you're saying, well, maybe I should be improving the product. And so all of these elements come into play to create resistance. Now, some of those are very real, but the majority of them are actually made up. They become from a place of fear, the fear of rejection, the fear of abandonment by not wanting to follow up. And hey, if ever you've had resistance following up or being too aggressive, realize that even the top salespeople, there's statistics that are sent out that most salespeople don't follow up more than twice. Most sales happen after at least 6 interactions. Now, even if you're in your e-commerce, that's also acknowledging that, hey, if you've sent an email to your list about a promotion happening this month and they don't buy, again, the average interactions is 6. One will not be enough. And so, if you're feeling anxiety of knowing that you're going to need to send 6 emails for people to actually start converting for the offer, and you're going to need to use every trick in the book, you're going to need to use the scarcity, you're going to need to use the FAQ, the social proof, the likability. All of these triggers of influence, for those of you who are a fan of Robert Cialdini, are all going to be important for you to be able to maximize your conversions. The question is, are you feeling blocked to do what you know and is being taught as what are the successful formulas, or do you feel that resistance come up? I want to point towards another clue, which is, of course, where most of our beliefs are made in childhood. And I want you to investigate. I was talking to Dr. Shelley Lefko, and she's part of the Lefko Institute, and they basically work with adults of every industry to help them with their beliefs and childhood beliefs that were formed that really dictate their behavior today. And we were talking about how this affects salespeople. And she says, well, the same plagues that target people of all kind, which was, I am not enough. I'm not going to be good enough. People won't like me. All of these things that have been imprinted in childhood are especially vulnerable for people that are in sales, because every time you get a no, you are reminded of these triggers from childhood that will be reinforced. And if you are doing any kind of sales, you have to realize that you have to deal with more no's than yeses. I mean, if you're maximizing your conversion on an e-commerce store, you might be getting 100 visits and you might be getting 5 purchases. And I'm being generous here. When it comes to sales, imagine you're actually dealing with 95 of those rejections as well. So it becomes very raw, and you need to have a base in your own personal growth, in your own way of being able to confront the fact that, hey, it's the product, it's not you. You can use the techniques, you can use all the processes in the right way, but sometimes you just need to work the numbers and realize that rejection is a natural part of it. That being said, you'll want to look into your past. And hey, for any of you who are fans of Mindvalley, love personal growth, there's definitely a lot of things you can do there to be able to work on that. But I would want you to draw attention to it. Even think about these moments. Parents, if I can think of times I'd wanted, like the Nintendo, right? Latest Nintendo came out. What would I do? Like, are children natural salespeople? Like, I ask this question, I'm very careful with the words here. I ask, are they natural salespeople? Well, they will be shameless, but they're definitely not going to be good salespeople because they won't care about the buyer. They just care about themselves. So, like in the case of wanting a Nintendo, I would just be like, Mom, Dad, can I get it? Please, please, please. And there's a moment where a parent can be very tired and will come around the words of, hey, no means no. Stop asking. And so, isn't it funny that a lot of people have resistance when it comes to asking for more, asking for the sale? Hey, let's step outside of that and say, you know, asking for a bigger salary if ever you're finding yourself being employed. All of these elements that would come into conflict with these impressions of like, if I push too much, I will not be liked, love will be removed, and thus I will have some shame and guilt blockages. So inspect that and realize that if you can choose a powerful identity when it comes to selling and being the salesperson or the marketer that you want to be, this will be very powerful to allow you to act in accordance to the role models that you love. Because think about it, who could you have as a sales role model? I mean, we've covered two types already, which is the Jordan Belfords or the Wolf of Wall Streets. So you could be inspired, but when you go and watch that movie again and you realize how they're treating the clients, you might be realizing that might be the ideal role model that you want to follow because there is no care or responsibility for the transaction being made. But then we look at the other one, which is a used car salesman, and that's just not somebody anybody wants to be if you're looking at that sleazy, crooked smile type of used car salesman. So, who are the role models we could step into as a salesperson? Well, let's remove salesperson for a moment and let me just ask you, who are the biggest role models you have, period? Let's start there. Who are some of the famous people that you can look up to? Now, if you're somebody that's into crypto, do I dare say the words Elon Musk? But before the crypto went down, a lot of people would have been a fan of Elon Musk. I know I still am. And maybe you're looking at people like Steve Jobs. Maybe you're looking at someone like Oprah Winfrey. Maybe you're looking at someone like Sheryl Sandberg. Whoever are these greatest idols, the people that you respect the most and you really look up to. My next question to you, after you've picked who that person you look up to is ask the following question: are they salespeople? Is Elon Musk a salesperson? If you've seen the Model 3 or the Cybertruck launch, you'll realize that everything was designed for the maximum amount of sales via their e-commerce store. Do you remember what statistics happened when they did that launch? Let's talk about the Cybertruck. First off, they designed this amazing launch party. They had like the visuals, like if it was going to be a rock star coming up on stage, and it was Elon Musk, closer looking at Tony Stark, like the real life Iron Man. And then they're doing some demos. Mind you, some of the demos didn't go too well, but regardless, they ended up moving 300,000 orders for the Cybertruck. And by now, the truck hasn't even been completed. They have 500,000 orders. That's billions in revenue, right? So you tell me if that launch was successful or not. You tell me if Elon Musk is not a salesperson. I'd say that would be a lie. He is a very effective salesperson. But what I love about using him as an example is that he's a weird, awkward guy. Yet he does sales in a way that aligns to him. And so even as you look at these role models or these slick salespeople, which a lot of people won't associate with, understand that there are some powerful role models that you can look up to and acknowledge that they are salespeople and you can sell in that way. And you can even sell in your way, and it's perfectly fine. Whenever you go out there and sell and you step into a more powerful identity, then you can at least give yourself the permission and maybe the hope that, hey, maybe I can like sales because when I do, I get to channel that inner type of person that I want to become, such as my role model, and start modeling those behaviors a little better. So when I talk about shame and guilt blockages, that's really the lowest level that you can make the sale from. It's like you're completely blocked. You're going to be running away from the sale. But whenever you continue down this journey, you're going to want to get closer to being able to sell with love. Now, in my book, I break down what all these different levels are and what you can do at each stage. But I want to go directly to where you can actually apply this concept within your business. And I'm going to walk you through a few of the loves of selling that when you get this love in place, and you can build your marketing around the discovery that you make when you put this love in place, is going to make you highly effective at converting even more on whatever store that you're putting together. So let's go through these 5 loves of selling. The first love is love the impact. Now, I started this conversation talking about impact because impact is really the first love you want to do. What do I mean by love your impact? You need to start understanding that reason you exist is to solve a problem. The reason you have a product that you're selling is that through the purchase of this product that you're selling, a certain problem gets solved. It thus makes an impact. And I want you to take a moment here because if you're going to be going and selling, a lot of people are going to be asking a question whenever there's a lot of options out there. And these options could be a commodity purchase on Amazon, or it could be something about going to a local store and buying it there, or they're going to come to you and buy from you. And every single buyer has one little question at the back of their mind when they're about to make that purchase, which is why and why you? So when you want to start answering the why is really direct. Is what's the impact that directly happens from people wanting to purchase your product? It's the reason of existence for your business. So let's take, for example, what would be a good example? I would say let's continue along our Elon Musk line and let's talk about Tesla, right? Why is it that somebody would want to buy a Tesla car? Well, let's talk about wanting to have an electric vehicle, right? Wanting to have an electric vehicle that looks cool. Let's have an electric vehicle that drives fast, is comfortable. My neighbors would be admiring me for having. If you have a Nissan Leaf, which is it's a great car if you want to be very fuel efficient, but it doesn't have the same ring as having a Model S in your driveway and being have to have that prestige, right? So when you look at the impact for the buyer, take a moment to list what are all the reasons that your buyer would benefit from actually making your purchase. You can even go on a commodity level saying they get to have a vehicle that drives them from point A to point B, but let's be clear, you're not driving a Tesla if that's your only objective. There's definitely more reasons that somebody would want to buy. In your case, you might be selling, for example, say you are an e-commerce store selling iPhone cases, right? And we want to go to the more commodity level. But what are the reasons people want to buy a case? Well, you could be very specific. People want to have something that looks good on their phone, maybe has function and can be acquired at a great price. You're obviously dealing at something that's more of a commodity level, but maybe you have a special material in your case that really makes it impact resistance. Maybe you have a special design on your cases that really make it stand out and look extremely fashionable. Now you can start playing with these dimensions, and we'll be talking more about product design in a bit, but know that at the fundamental level, there's key problems as to why people want to buy from you. And this is where you want to fall in love with the impact. I mean, you truly need to have this level of enthusiasm, knowing that when you solve this problem for your buyers, you are going to get some satisfaction from that. But I also want to go beyond, which is now that you've actually defined what is the impact for the buyer, I want you to expand it in a very interesting way, which is what is the impact for the world? What is the impact for the world from your activities, your existence, your why you exist as a company? And again, I can take an example such as Tesla, Elon Musk, which it becomes absolutely clear whenever you make a purchase with them. Bless. Thank you. Sorry about that. Whenever you make a purchase of a Tesla car, it's more than just getting your needs met when it comes to getting an electric car, being able to actually go out and look cool in a car, but it's also about being able to support the mission that it stands for. When we talk about SpaceX and Tesla and all that suite of companies, what is the ultimate objective? What is the big impact on the world they want to make? Well, on a Tesla level, it could be a little smaller. It's actually to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels when it comes to driving vehicles. But there's a reason beyond that. If ever you've studied anything from Elon Musk, you would think about how he wants to make humanity an interplanetary species. And in order to do that, they want to colonize Mars. To be able to colonize Mars, you're going to need to have very efficient electric power that is solar powered, that has tunnels that probably drive under Mars, to have rockets that get you to Mars. And now you can start understanding the why behind every single decision as to which industries Elon Musk usually goes for, including how do we set up very efficient and quick internet access that can be accessed through space? Imagine people on Mars are going to need some internet. Now he already knows how to throw satellites around the planet to be able to drive it. So you can see how all these pieces connect to an ultimate mission. And when you go out to buy this, you are now inspired to buy because you know that whenever you make a purchase, it puts one effort closer towards the ultimate goal and the purpose of the company. So I turn it to you. What is your why? What is the ultimate result of people buying your transactional product? And here's the clue. If you can't define it, it will remain a transactional product as opposed to being something that actually will have more profit margins, more brand around it, and more loyalty from your customers. Because again, they're going to ask, why you? And people will want to do business with somebody that they align with their mission and will pay a premium for that. The final impact I want you to take some time on is understanding the impact for yourself. Now, I have a feeling for our audience here, this is not going to be the most problematic area for you, but for those who have resistance around bringing abundance and wealth for themselves, define as well the clear impacts as to why you're creating this business. What is the money you want to generate for yourself? And how, like, if you're going to be doing something incredible, you want to be compensated for that. What is the freedom you're looking for? And why is that important for you? What is it that you want to provide for your family, for your community? And what I want to stress here is the more time you spend on coming up with all of these direct and indirect reasons of impact that happen for the buyer, for the world, and for yourself out of the existence of your company and your e-commerce is going to give you the right marketing material to be able to justify for everyone as to why you exist. And when it comes to the 0 point of selling, when people are going to want to say, why should I buy from this person? They're going to want to align with your values. So be clear on that. And then you can translate it into copy so that whenever someone's making a purchase, you can say, this is what we stand for, and this is why we exist, and this is why we want to make sure that the world is a better place. Every single company that has that strong mission and purpose is able to draw in better talent, maximize sales, and I would love to see the same results for you. Now, I did speak about 5 loves of selling, and I'm going to give you a clue as to what the 4 other ones are, but I want to make sure you understand this. The more you're going to learn about how to sell with love, the more you're going to realize the times that you're not selling with love. And that will become painful because your results will show. You'll realize that sales go down when you're not bringing in that enthusiasm. You're not showing up 110%, but luckily you'll be able to have a cheat sheet that is going to guide you on how you can step back into love with these 5 loves in total. So what is the second love in selling is actually to love the buyer. And I'll give you a quick example of what exactly does that look like, or at least what it doesn't look like, which is imagine you had a goldfish. Now, I have a puppy, and whenever it is that I want to show love to this puppy, I'm petting its belly, I'm taking it for a walk, I'm holding it and cuddling it with it, and the dog's fine with that. But if I had a goldfish and I wanted to love it the same way, and I just grab it out of the aquarium and I just start cuddling with it and I start petting it, and then the fish dies. Not a very loving thing to do, right? So I want to give you 2 things here. One, understand that actually the best way to show love to the buyer is to take the time to understand them. The more you understand the buyer, the more you can speak the language that is necessary for them to understand the value you want to provide for them. Loving the buyer is actually a quest for understanding. The second thing I want to leave you with is know that the buyers don't necessarily want to be, the buyers are not necessarily you. And so if you're trying to sell to everybody like you would want to buy, understand that there's some very different people that want to buy and they need to be spoken to differently. So many times I see a business that's just trying to sell to themselves as the avatar and they miss out on golden opportunity and they limit themselves as well. I would maybe suggest to check your ego in the process. But loving the buyer is a critical step so that you take more efforts to understand them so you can sell and convert higher. The third love in selling is how do you love the product? Now, I spoke about before what are shame and guilt blockages. And if you have a mediocre product, of course, you'll have resistance selling. And instead of just being incentivized to drop your price and create a promo, I would actually encourage you to do something very different. Take whatever product you're selling and seeing that you don't feel like it's the greatest of products, and imagine you had to sell it for 10 times the price. So whether that's a trinket around $20, imagine it's $200. And I want you to come up with the reasons as to why it will be worth $200. And then you can start looking at ideas that are going to come up for innovation. And that's what's key. Whenever you're looking at the fourth love of selling, you've done the time to build an incredible product. You have the buyer that you understand and you're clear on your impact. This is when you can love the process. The process of selling is not about manipulation. It's about empathy. It's about speaking the language that is necessary for people to truly understand the value of what is it that you want to provide for them, the problems you want to solve. And now you can learn all these techniques that you're learning at this wonderful summit and go out there with enthusiasm and apply them all in the best of ways possible. The quick litmus test is this. Imagine every time the buyer purchases, you show them all the tricks you use in marketing and sales about how you got them to convert. And if they're left with being impressed, you're doing a good job. If they're left with being disgusted, you need to revisit what processes you use. And that's where you can keep your sanity and do it in a place from love. And the last but not least of the loves is love the self. Now, life is a journey of discovering self love. And I promise you that as you're in a journey of building your own business, doing e commerce, you're going to have good days, bad days. Your emotions might be thrown a little all over the place. But know that whatever it is that you're doing, it is the best that you're doing. And then you can go out there, learn more, do more. And sometimes you'll have slow day and you want to make sure you're patient with yourself. Self practices, self care are going to be important for your mental state so you can come back from a loving place for yourself and go out there and make the impact you've always wanted. My name is Jason Mark Campbell. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you were able to get some ideas here that are very applicable. And again, if you want to get a cheat sheet on how to sell with love to make sure that you have a checkbox for all these 5 loves, find me at Jason Mark Campbell on Instagram or LinkedIn. Send me a direct message and I'll be able to answer your questions and give you this product, which is going to be a sheet that you can use at any time you sell. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your summit.